Hello there and welcome to another Partners in Crime tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to learn how to make an awesome logo burning animation using only Blender 3D. So if you don't have Blender on your computer already, you can get it using the first link in the description. So for a quick overview of this tutorial, we're going to first create a basic scene within Blender, then we're going to jump into the compositor and add a mask and then some glow effects. Then we'll animate the mask and add some particles and we'll be finished creating our animation. So let's get to it. So in Blender here, we're going to type numpad 7 on our keyboard, go into top view, and then type Ctrl Alt and then numpad 0 to bring the camera into that view. So let's delete this default cube here, type X and click delete, and now we are going to add some text. So you can either type Shift A on your keyboard and click text, or go to the top left of the screen here, click the create tab and scroll down and click text. So let's go to the right of the screen here and enter the text object data tab, and let's center our text object. Now we'll lower it by left clicking on the screen arrow, pulling it down and releasing that. And we're just going to erase all the text and type one letter, and we'll type letter G. And tab to exit text edit mode. So now we're going to open a font that will include in the description of this video that we're going to use to get a little bit more of a stylized G there. Let's see. Let's go back to web fonts. Here we go. We'll use Magenta here. So you want to click that and open it up. And just type SX. Move that in, left click and S, and just scale that up and left click, and then you can lower this on the screen. So now we're going to add a gradient material to this. So we'll go into the material sections and click new to add a new material, and we will make it a shadeless material. We're going to use the node setup to adjust the colors. So if you split the screen here, you want to go into the node editor, scroll up to zoom in, and select our material in the material slot of the node editor. Now we will click add input geometry and put the output of this into the color here. And if we set this to rendered view, you can see we've got all sorts of colors on our G. So what we want to do is we want to separate these colors, add converter separate RGB, so that we get the 3 different vector locations for the colors, or vector directions for the colors. So R is obviously horizontally, and if we put the G, which is green, we get that vertical gradient there. And to have more control over the gradient, let's add in a color ramp and put it after the separate RGB node. And if we set it to B-spline, we get a lot more of a smoother gradient there. So we can pull this white gradient part here and click plus and just pull this gray gradient part to the other side. Pull that up and add another plus. Just want to have some brightness in the middle and then some darkness on the top and bottom edges. And that looks pretty good. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make the background black. And then we're going to go into the film tab and we're going to change shading alpha from sky to transparent so that we get to that transparent background there. Let's make the resolution 100%. And now we can render this out, FN F12. And we will create our mask for the compositor. So, first thing we want to do to get started on creating our mask is switch to mask mode. Then you want to click new to add a new mask. And then you can hold down control and then just left click and just add your mask points. I'm gonna make it as round as possible. And now you can type A again, and Alt C, and that'll just connect your circle. So now we're gonna add in a feather for this. So hold down Shift and left click on this and move this out. This is gonna feather the edges a little bit so that we don't have a hard edge and have a little bit of a soft fade out. So let's type in so we can see here, mask display, overlay, and you can see that the feather extends to the green lines here that we have pulled out, and this is the original mask. Okay, so we've created our mask. Now let's get to animating it and AV sync and change the frame rate to 60 frames per second. So now we'll have the audio and video synced, and we'll have it play as it should in playback, and we'll have it 60 frames per second. So now we will choose our keyframes for our mask. So let's jump to a frame. Let's say frame 105. Let's go with 105, and let's see, let's uncheck overlay so we can see how far our mask extends there. So 105, type A and A again, scale this down, left click. We want it to just extend just past the G there, so have your cursor over that, and let's see, let's make it close in a little bit. Let's adjust some of these points. Just left click and pull these points around. And alright. So type A and then A again and scale this down a little bit. Left click and type I. And you can see this yellow line here means that we've inserted a keyframe. So basically this will be the frame where you can just see the burning edges of the Jeep. And if you jump to a previous frame, we'll go to frame 70 and type S0, enter, and then I. That'll insert a keyframe for it being that size on frame 70. So from frame 70 to frame 105, we will have this mask just teetering on the edges of this G, and then we'll jump to a later frame, and then it'll completely expand past the G. So if we jump to a later frame, just so it slowly comes out, 126, let's type S, move that out, left click, and type I. So now we've inserted our mask keyframes. Rewind, and you see we have our keyframes there, and we have our mask scaling. So now we have our mask. Let's jump into the compositor and start creating those fun edge effects. So jump into the compositor, check use nose and backdrop, and add output viewer, and add, let's see, add input mask. And let's select the mask that we have created. And if we hook this up to the viewer, you can see we've got our feathered mask there. So what we want to do now is we want to create the kind of burning edges effect. So we're going to add a texture. So we'll go into the texture settings, just click that there. click new to add a new texture, change it to a clouds texture, and we will use the noise basis of Voronoi F2, and we'll give it a ramp, and see, let's make this position at 0.475, and let's see, let's go down, let's change the depth to 21, and it should be good. So now let's click add input texture to input this texture over here for the mask. So let's select the texture we created. Let's actually name it to make it easier to organize our scene. Let's see. Let's name it burn texture, and we will select it here. And what we're going to do is we're going to displace the edges of our feathered mask with this texture. Oops. So let's just keep that there. And let's click add, distort, displace, and hook it up to the mask there. Hook it up after the mask, and let's output the, let's put the output of the value into the vector. And let's do 35 for both the X and Y scaling. So we just wait for this to composite and see how it looks. Alright, so let's get a little bit more displacement. Let's start 80, 30, and let's change the X scale to 1.7 so that we get a little bit less of this awkward horizontal stretching. Alright, so that's looking much better. Now, to create our burn effect, the texture itself will also need to be animated. So we are going to, let's see, rewind this here, and we're going to make the texture scaling 0.1, hover cursor over that and type I on frame 0. And let's see, let's jump to, let's actually make this 0.05, hover cursor over this and type I, and then jump to frame 167, and then make it 0.1 on frame 167. So hover cursor over these values and type I on their respective frames. So we've got 0.05 on frame 0, 0.1 on frame 167. So now we have our setup. And actually, since we have a little bit of an older computer here, we're going to reduce the resolution to 50% until we're done with our scene. So alright, so now we'll get a little bit of faster compositing as we go through this tutorial. Now, we have created our mask for our, let's see, for our G right here. So if we click add color mix and put it here, we can actually plug in the displaced mask to this value and change it to multiply and output it to the viewer and see just how this looks. So you can see we have some of that displacement on the edges. If we uncheck use alpha, you can see we get kind of the fade on the edges. So we're gonna have to rewind to a different location in the animation, to a different keyframe in the animation. Let's go with frame 106. Alright, and now you can see we got those edges fading out, and that looks fairly nice. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a brightness mask for this. That's going to have some colors and some glows. So we're going to get into creating that. Alright, so the first thing we are going to do is we're going to add in a color ramp node. We're going to change it to B-spline so we have that smooth interpolation. So now we're going to left click on this multiply node and shift D to duplicate it and just move it here. So what we're doing now is we're going to sort of mask the edges alone and get that and just brighten them and then add some glow. So let's plug in this displace mask to the color ramp. Move mouse button to pan around here. And now we will add in we'll left click on this. We'll actually just change this to a dodge node and put it here. Alright, and input this here. And you can see we've sort of masked out the edges here. So what we'll want to do now is so that we can sort of just squeeze out this white area here and just kind of just get this edge part is we're going to add in another stop on our color ramp, drag it over to the right here, and pull the black down. So we'll have the bright edges that sort of fade out because of this color stop here, and this white part here should disappear into this, as you can see, the brighter edges. And if you type Alt V, you should see these bright edges when you zoom in. Alright, so one thing we want to do is actually give it a little bit of a wider berth on the brightness here. So let's add in another stop here. Click plus, just so we squeeze the brightness just before it fades. So we have two bright stops in the center, and you can see we have created our masked brightness. So if we type V, zoom back out. Now what we want to do is we want to add some glow to it actually. So we've got our mask with our G here. One thing we want to do is to be able to separate this edge part from the G. So right now we've got all our nodes hooked so that it's kind of one and the same image, so that it's kind of connected. What we need to do is separate out this brightness part and then get to the adding of glows. So let's add some glows here just so we have some that we can throw in. Add filter glare and change it to a fog glow. Change the quality to high and reduce the threshold to 0. Actually, we'll keep it at 1 since these pixels are pretty bright here and we don't want an excessive glow. Okay, so now that we have we've added our glare node, let's see how we're going to separate the white areas here from the rest of the G. So we could duplicate this dodge node, Shift D. We'll use that later too. Let's use the middle mouse button to come around here. And let's actually input this image node to the Dodge node and put the viewer output here. Okay, and now let's Shift D to duplicate this Dodge node. So now we've got our plane G there. So using the middle mouse button, pan around here, let's add in this here. Alright, so we've got that brightness part pretty much there. We just got the brighter areas. So let's see, what we'll do is we'll Shift D this again actually. Put that there, change it to a multiply node, and we will hook this here instead. And now we have masked out only the bright edges. So the thing to do after we have achieved that is to add it back into our original G. So we will click Add, Color, Mix, put that there, Add, and we will add in this Dodge back to this node. And this is where we add our glows. So you just drop this in here, add color, RGB curves, and let's add our color there. Heighten the red levels, lower the blue levels, and then wait for it to turn orangish. So you can see we've got our orange there. So let's lower the threshold to 0 so we get an increased glow. And actually left click on this and Shift D to duplicate it and hook this here. Use my mouse button to pan around. And you can see we've now got a nice glow edge to our burning G. So you can always heighten the red levels even more and decrease the blue levels even more as well. But for now, we are going to get started on adding in the grunge background and then throwing in some particles. So let's get the grunge background. So we're going to include a download link for this in the description. Now we just searched grunge backgrounds and then sorted them by free for reuse or public domain on Google Images. So we're going to put a download link for this in the description, and you can actually use any grunge background you want, but for this tutorial you might want to start off using the one included. So you just drag it into Blender, and at this point we are now going to check use alpha and see how our scene looks. Now the main thing we want to do is to be able to overlay our logo onto a background, and to do that the background needs to be transparent. So let's see if we've got ourselves a transparent background here, and yes we do, but parts of the text are shown before they should. And we are going to need to add in a masking node to prevent that. So let's just figure out where we're going to add this. And the main culprit here seems to be after we use the multiply node. So here's what we're going to do. So add matte. See, we're going to either use a color key or a difference or distance key. Now for this, let's see, we're going to go with a color key. We're just going to make the color key the color black, and we're going to hook it up. Let's see, we're going to hook it up right after this multiply node, and make sure you have the image input. And that should get rid of this dark black area here. Oh, you want to make the key color black, so that it takes out the black area. And now you can see we have our burning logo, and its background is transparent. So let's add in this image through a node in the compositor. Add input image. Select the grunge background image, and then add a scaling node. Add distort scale, and we will put this here. Hook the output here, and change it to render size. We're going to use an alpha over node to overlay our logo onto the background. So click add color alpha over, left click that, and output that there. So basically the image that you want to overlay onto the background goes into this bottom socket here, and the background goes into the top socket. Wait for it to composite, and then we're on our way to going back into the viewport. We're gonna have to add in some of those particles. So let's go into default view, 3D view, and we can set it to material view. We are going to organize this into layers. So if you click the render layers tab there, you want to select layer 1 for the first layer. The first layer will be renamed to logo or text layer, because you can actually, if you're familiar with Blender, you can import an image and replace this text here and use your logo instead. But for now we're just gonna use this prototype G here. Now let's click this plus and click the second layer, and now we've added a second layer, and we've made sure that it's linked to the second layer tab. Double click on it, and we're going to name this layer the particle layer. Left click to confirm, and for the particle layer we're going to use material passes. So you click passes here and check material index. Now our particle emitter is going to be a plane, so let's type Shift A, at mesh plane, move it to the second layer by typing M, and click the second layer. Hold down Shift and select the second layer at the bottom of the screen, so the second layer is also shown in the viewport. And now go into the modifiers tab, click add modifier and subdivision surface, and change the subdivisions to 3. Hit apply on that, and go into the particles section, add a new particle system, G, and move that down, left click. So we got our particles. We're gonna make sure they're not affected by gravity by going down into the fill weight sections and pulling the gravity down to 0. So now they won't just drop off the screen. Now we want our particles emit from here because we kind of just want them to come out and just kind of be blowing around turbulently. But we're going to first need to create the objects that are going to be our particles. So we're going to type Shift A, curve, circle. G, move that there, and left click. And we're going to go into the curve object data tab, click 2D to make the circle filled in. Now we're going to go into the materials tab, add a new material, make it a shadeless material, and make the pass index 5 so that we can separate it from our other objects in the compositor. So scale this down really small by typing S, move your cursor in, and left click. Shift D to duplicate this, left click that there, scroll that up, and click plus. So now this is a separate material, and we can make it orange, and we can make it a little bit bigger. S, and scale it up, left click. And now we're going to give it a different pass index, so pass index of 7. Now at this point you may want to save your file, because we're about to add some particles, increase the number of particles. So file save as, and we will save it as burn logo tutorial PICG and save as Blender file. And now it should be saved somewhere on your computer. So now we're going to select our Bezier circles, B, left click and drag a box over this, and type Ctrl G to group that. And we will name the group particles. Left click to come out of here. So now we're going to select the group in the particle system. So you're going to right click on your particle emitter, go into the particle settings, check group here, click group there. Let's pull this out so you can see exactly what we're doing here. So we click the group tab. Now we're going to, next to duplicate group, we're going to click particles, because that's what we named the group here. Now you can see we've got our tiny little particles here, and you can actually make them randomly sized and increase the size a little bit so we can see them a little bit better. Now if we rewind this and play this, it should emit from here. And what we need to do now is we need to get some force fields in. But before that, let's change the start frame to -5 so that we get some already emitted particles. And change the lifetime to, let's go 95, maybe a little bit more than 95, so we'll go 95.3. And now we are going to add in those force fields. So scroll up to zoom in, Shift A, and force field turbulence. And let's go into the physics tab and put the turbulent force field strength a little bit higher, 16.1. And we'll make the wind strength, we'll actually make it 5. And we'll G and move this down, and left click and Shift D now to duplicate that, and left click. Next, let's actually change this to a wind force field now, and we will change, let's see, let's change the strength of this to 16.1 and type R twice and just rotate it up, left click and rewind. And if you just Alt A and play this through, we'll reduce this to 5. Let's right click on the particles and give them some damp so they don't move so fast, and we'll increase the size so you can see them better. So at this point we're concentrating on the movement of the particles. We'll reduce the size of the particles once we have that proper movement, and let's make the drag to point to 36. So it just slows down a little bit. Dampen, put it up. Alright, so right click on this here, go into the strength settings, and let's make the strength 16. Alright, so we get more turbulent movement, 16.1. And you can just keep playing with the force fields and particles until you get the kind of look you like. So I'm going to SX on this particle emitter so we get a wide emission of particles. SX and left click. And that looks pretty good. So we have our particles. Let's hit pause on this. And let's hit F12 so that we render these particles. And go into the compositor, and we are actually going to look for the composite node to make sure that anything we've added here composites properly. So we've got the burning animation coming out there. Can fast forward to rewind to a previous frame, and just wait for the compositor to put that mask there to get a little bit more burn in the view. And we're gonna have to add in our particles here. So click Add, Input, and let's see, Render Layers. put that here and change it to the particle layer. And we are going to actually pay attention here. Let me see. Got the logo text layer overlaid over the background, and we want basically the particles to do the same thing. So we're going to we're gonna left click on this, hold down Shift D, put this add here, and put the image here. We're gonna add the particles into our scene. And we're gonna move this up. And we should be able to see the particles. So after we've added the particles, we're gonna add in some nice blurry and glow effects. So we had added a index material pass to our render layer to be able to separate the particles, the particles of different materials. So if you hold on Shift and middle mouse button and just pan around here, you can right click on this particle here, size it down smaller, left click it, and Shift D, duplicate it, left click here and size it up. And now we will right click on this and increase the number of particles to 1500 so that we get more particles there. So let's play this along. And let's actually jump back into default view. We're going to make sure these particles behave properly by baking them. So we're going to go into the particle section, and we're going to look for the cache section, which is here, and bake all dynamics. So that should be quick, and our particles should play properly once that's done. And they should stay playing properly. And now we can actually render this and go back into the compositor. Now we have added a material index pass of, let's right click on this, go into the material section of 5 to the right white particles. So we're going to separate them out, add color mix, and you're going to put the index material pass here and change it to an add node. Scroll up to zoom in, and we will add in an ID mask, add converter ID mask, put it after the index material pass, and make sure it uses the index of 5 because that's the index that we have set our bright white particles to. Now at this point we can add in one of these glows. So let's left click on this glare down here, Shift D, duplicate it, and put it right there in front of the ID mask, and we will get some glow to our particles. And that is looking pretty good. We've got glowing bright white particles, and we've got the orange particles. Now what we want to do is sort of kind of add some fake depth of field to it. To do that, we are going to add in a matte ellipse mask. Pull the width up and pull the height up. So we're gonna basically use a blurred ellipse mask to mix our particles with a higher scale, more blurry version of them. So left click on this, Shift D it, and hook it here, and change this to a mix. And let's put this here, and let's actually put another version, another add node there. And we can add distort scale and place this here, and we can change it to 1.2. Now we wait for this to composite. Now we haven't blurred up our mask yet, but this is we're gonna wait for it to composite so you can see a general idea of what we are trying to achieve. So you can see that the areas outside of the mask seem to appear a little bit smaller than the areas not covered by it. So let's see, let's find where we were adjusting this and switch it around, make it 1.5. So basically, if we, where's the ellipse mask? If we left click on this, all the areas most of the areas outside that are not covered by the ellipse should be larger. And you can see we've got the larger scaling here. So this larger scale part is going to need to get some blur. So we're going to add filter blur, put this after the scale node, and change it to fast Gaussian. And we will blur it up to 35. And at this point, it's time to blur the mask as well, because you can see the hard edges. If let's see, Alt F, Alt V, and let's see, it doesn't really let you pan here. Yeah. Okay, so you can see you get these really hard edges here, and you just want it to cleanly fade in. So that's where the blur comes in. So where do we put that blur? Alright, let's Shift D on this blur node and put it to the ellipse mask. V to zoom out, and we may have increased the width a little bit too much on the ellipse mask. So we're going to reduce it a little bit, and then we're going to watch our blur fade do its work. Now, at this point, we are closing in on finishing the animation. We're going to animate the camera and then add in some fades. So we've got that sort of simulated depth of field there. We've got our particle scene. We've got this all set up in the compositor basically. So it's time to jump back into the viewport, add in our camera zoom, and then we're gonna add in some fading, and we're gonna actually jump back into the compositor to do that. So let's hurry up, go into default view, 3D view, and animate this camera. So let's see, it's gonna be really zoomed in, then it's gonna kind of come out. So let's see, with the camera selected, you want to make sure you have it right clicked. Go into the camera object data tab, hover your cursor over the focal length value, and type I. When you get the highlight, that means you've inserted your keyframe successfully. Rewind here, and let's increase the focal length to 40. Have your cursor over I, and then play that up, and now reduce the focal length, and have your cursor over that and type I. So we get the zoom in if you rewind and type Alt A, and then we get the continuous zoom out. That's kind of softer, and that looks pretty good. So let's fast forward past all our keyframes and reduce it slightly more to 31. Have your cursor over that and type I. So now we've animated our camera. And that is a very nice, smooth focal length animation. So back into the compositor. So there's a point in our animation where we just want our scene to fade in, and we'll use it. We'll actually use a full second. Since this is 60 frames per second, we're going to jump to frame 60. We're going to jump into the compositor. We're going to duplicate this alpha over node, typing Shift D, put that there. We're going to actually pull this to black. So on frame 60, the black overlay value will be 1. Well, will be 0 actually. Make it 0 so that it's not there on frame 60. So hover your cursor over that, type I, and on frame 0 or frame 1, either one, you want to put the alpha overvalue to 1. So then we'll have the black overlay. Have your cursor over this. You don't want to forget to insert this keyframe or the other one. So I, and then on 60, make sure the value is 0. And you have the keyframe inserted for that. So we have a black overlay, and it steadily decreases in factor, which decreases in value, which means it's disappearing, until frame 60, at which point your full animation will come in. Now, once your mask is done, you're gonna want to have a fade out for that as well. So at frame, let's see, frame 160, I'll go with frame 175. Have your cursor over that, type I, fast forward to near the end, and put the value to 1 and type I, and put this into the compositor, and then you should be finished with your animation. So let's go back over this node setup so you can see exactly how it looks. And yeah, let's fast forward to the previous frame in the animation to make sure that our mask is showing up properly. So let's see how big the mask should be. Result. Right, we should be able to see our text coming in. Let's see, when did we make our mask start? We made it start on frame 70, so let's check it out on frame 96, see how it looks. And we are going to wait for this to composite, check over our animation. Alright, so that's the mid burn in the animation, and 126 is a frame when it should be finished, which means when your logo or text should just come in completely and you shouldn't see the burn anymore. So we'll make sure we have that set correctly. So we're gonna go back into the mask here, and that is frame 126. Let's see. So we're gonna have to make the mask itself expand a little bit more. So S, move cursor out, left click, and on frame, make sure you did that on frame 178. Have your cursor over that and type I. And we'll wait for this to composite to make sure we have that full fade out, and we do. And now we're going to add in a kind of cinematic vignette to this, and that should conclude the tutorial. So if you add Matte Ellipse Mask, change the width up, change the height up, and click add color mix, hook this here, and hook the ellipse mask to the bottom input, change it to multiply. We can zoom out, left click on one of our blurs, shift D it, and move it here. You can actually increase the blur values to 85, 85. And we'll wait for this to composite and see if we have our sort of cinematic edge there. Alright, so we can reduce the multiply value to 0.1. We can actually make the background a little bit darker as well. So color saturation value and hook that up here and put the value to 0.3. And one cool thing you can do in Blender is you can go into the scene settings and the color management, and if you think that your colors aren't bold enough, or if you like a sort of a different color scheme, you can change the let's see, you can change the look, and you can just none is the default. You can select any of these presets here, and then you should have an instant change in the in the colors in your scene. So you can get like, this one looks nice, Agfa Color Futura 200, so ones in this section look nice. You get a kind of cinematic orangish color tone added to everything. And remember, clicking none will take you to the default. So to edit your scene, you can add in a whole bunch of these color presets. So we are basically done with this tutorial now. There's a tutorial on how to render any Blender file to a video included in the description. If you found this tutorial helpful, leave a like and comment below and let us know how you like our new style of tutorials. Also, you can check out our site and our other platforms in the description below or in this card to the top right of the screen here. So, thanks for watching, and if you want more tutorials from Partners in Crime, you can subscribe.